Hi, everybody, and welcome back for another episode of Sacred Anarchies, a post-church podcast. I am here with my very fabulous, magical best friend, Barry Taylor. Bez, why can't you ever introduce me once in a while? Why do I always have to do the
Yes, she is the Buffy St. Maria of Long Island.
Buffy St. What is that?
The hippie middle part, black-haired vampire's wife, wannabe, wishing she was in a vampire's dress.
That was like a string of insults. You literally just called me a vampire's wife wannabe. What the bleep?
Well, this is why I don't do the introductions, because you're so much better at that.
Yeah, but I'm always I just sing accolades.
You're the hostess with the mostess.
What?
You're the hostess with the mostess.
What are we, like Beetlejuice now? Isn't that like a Beetlejuice reference?
No, I don't think so. I don't know that I ever saw. I did see Beetlejuice, but a long time ago, too long to remember. And it's just you do social media so much better than I do, because I don't really want to be here. Do you understand?
Okay, don't tell our listeners you don't want to be here. He does want to be here.
I mean, I find
listeners how much you want to be here.
Oh, I really want to be here, but I really want to be here with you leading the way.
I see. Well, for those of you who are joining us on our YouTube channel today, yes, I am once again experimenting with the beloved and touted Gen Z middle part.
Gen Z, it's been around since the dawn of time. It might be Gen Roman.
I understand, but Gen Z is all about the middle part.
Oh, is that?
The millennials, it's all about the side part, and the Gen Zs rag on the millennials for having the side part and not the middle part. The problem is I don't think I can rock a middle part very well. We've talked about this. You love it. Some people hate it. My really good friend, my really good girlfriend, Beth, who I spent some time with in DC a few weeks ago, was like, you cannot pull that off. That middle part looks horrible. Go back to your side part. You have a beautiful side part and you cannot pull that middle part out. I was like, wow, Beth, all right, ease up. Jeez.
That's the reason why you should keep rocking the middle part until you own it fully and completely.
Very passionate
anyway,
about their parts.
People are very opinionated about other people's haircuts.
I know. And I don't care. I don't sweat that kind of thing.
Perhaps, as Jesus said, look in your own mirror first.
I just feel like Jesus probably rocked a middle part.
The Gospel of Jesus, chapter 7, verse 22. Fashion tips from the Almighty.
I have a lot of thoughts on this middle side part situation, but this is not a post side part podcast. This is a post church podcast. So we're going to kind of continue on into
maybe there needs to be, maybe you need to start your own podcast on, like, Gen Z side parts.
I have a couple podcast ideas, but honestly, I don't have the time for it right now. You said I'm so good at social media. I have taken a break from our social media. I feel bad about that. I haven't even been like talking much about the podcast or my own Patreon or whatever. Sometimes I just go in these like Bermuda Triangle moods of social media where I just need kind of like long breaks. And then when I'm ready to hit it hard again, I do, and it's fabulous. But I'm in a Bermuda Triangle of social media right now. Is that okay?
And can I just say, behind you, you've got like a white weavy thing. You're holding an earthenware mug and you've got a middle part.
This is my parents. I'm in my parents' house from the 70s. Yeah. This has made it a lot of decades.
You should be playing Stevie Nicks right now. You just should.
This is Calcroft.
It's very lovely, but it's got that earthenware hippie vibe.
Yeah. I mean, it's like total 70s. So I mean, I grew up with this stuff. If you're on our YouTube channel right now, you can see our mug that we're kind of talking about. But God, we are like
these are the days of recovered earthenware pottery anyway.
What was that?
These are the days of recovered earthenware pottery anyway.
Yeah, it really is. I know. So I've got like the macrame behind me. I've got the middle part. I've got the 1970s coffee cup. I've got the kind of crocheted summer sweater on. I'm like looking totally bohemian, and that is like the opposite of my style. So it's kind of hilarious.
But very much in the current vibe.
It is the current vibe. It is.
That we're going to talk about today, right?
Yeah, we are. So we haven't actually talked about the forecast forum recently. We used to talk a lot about them in the beginning of the podcast. And then for whatever reason, I don't know, we stopped talking about it for a while, but we're big fans of the Foresight. Is it Forecast Forum? Foresight Forum?
Foresight Forum, I think.
Or, yeah, I think I called it the wrong name. That just goes to show you how long we've been not plugged into sort of
Yeah.
stuff they're doing. But they just put out a really cool article recently. And this organization is all about predicting future trends of consumerism, fashion, food, technology. They're big on like futuristic skincare and things like that. So it's interesting to kind of follow and see what happens. And right now, obviously, as a lot of people are, they've been talking a ton about post-pandemic trends and what the pandemic did for the trend forecast essentially. And they talk about five things in particular. And we kind of had a conversation and we thought, this is sort of really telling because it really connects to some theological and ecclesial and kind of spiritual trends we're also seeing post pandemic. So we wanted to just take a few minutes and chat about it because we thought it was really insightful, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. And I think, yeah, I mean, I always think it's interesting to take, I mean, I don't know what I think about trend forecasting because, some
Yeah.
of the things are right. And I think, really they're observations more than like futurist. I mean, I know that they build their sort of brand by giving people these ideas, but it's very much a reading of the present, which I think is very, very important.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and the thing I like about these sort of companies is they pay a lot of attention to detail about what's going on in the culture, which helps them see and get a shape of the things that are pushing people in particular directions, which I think is one of the things that sometimes gets missed in theology, particularly when you try and apply a kind of singular, kind of monosyllabic view of life, like impose a grid onto the world and try and make the world fit. I've always thought that theology should be mobile and malleable, plastic, like your favorite Catherine Malibu
Mhm.
talks about. And I thought with the five things I named today, I thought they were really interesting because they cover a lot of territory in five short paragraphs, but I think they highlight four kind of key theological areas.
Yeah. So the first one is the maxi modernism,
Yeah.
which is kind of a little kind of tongue-in-cheek riff on minimalism,
Well,
and
yeah,
which was a massive trend and still in a lot of ways is. But they're saying because of the pandemic and people being locked down, they essentially turned their habitats into sort of playgrounds for themselves. And so it was about color. It was about all you could fit in a room to experience as much life as you possibly could inside your home because you couldn't experience life outside of your home. So those who are living with like, modernist, minimalist, that kind of thing is very little to engage aesthetically, architecturally, you
yeah,
know, all of those things. And so people just started adding stuff that made them happy, that brought them joy, that they could engage in different ways, that, they could kind of move around and do these projects with, and just essentially really brought some very real life that you could really feel in your senses, essentially. And they are crediting the pandemic with that.
yeah. Well, I mean, I think, for a long time, uh, we've kind of had a dominant uh, trend towards, like, the living in Los Angeles for a long time, Los Angeles people seem to be obsessed with mid-century modernism, as they are here in London. And there's this very kind of, everything's clean and modern and all of that kind of Maria Kondo, get rid of all of your clutter, and all that kind of stuff. And they say that one of the dynamics is that the people have kind of got a new relationship with their spaces because they were forced inside. And what a lot of people realized was they wanted comfort, not just a kind of clinical environment, and so it's eclectic and it's bohemian and it's a collapsing of all things. I mean, actually everything they said, I was like, well, I've always kind of lived that way. So, welcome to
Well, and
the
same.
to
Yeah.
the, yeah, but I do think what I thought was really interesting is I think that 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 shift away from that kind of clean
Mhm.
minimal, and I know it's only some people do it, other people will keep to it, it's just an idea. But
Yeah.
I do think that kind of, well, even the fact that people are fascinated with mid-century modernism. It's mid 20th century. It's pre postmodern. It's pre the invasion of kind of deconstruction and all of those kind of things. And it's a very analytic and functional way of looking at life. It's very utilitarian. You
Very symmetrical,
yeah,
very like plain and edge and
yeah.
line.
It reminds me of systematic theology.
That is a great
and
analogy.
or a particular kind of systematic theology, which is very clearly defined by grids and lines and very clearly
Line.
delineated
Yeah.
areas without any black or white, and definitely not much room for movement or comfort or eclectic fun. And
Yeah.
so I thought that was an interesting way of going, maybe actually what we're experiencing in some ways is, I know people talk a lot lately about the end of postmodernism. Um,
Postmodernism has barely started.
yeah,
So
yeah. I mean, as we've said before, I think a lot of people misinterpret and misunderstand the whole notion of postmodernism, and I think it's more tied to aesthetics than than much else. But I also think that we are moving away from, in different ways, we're moving away, sometimes begrudgingly and sometimes we're being forced away from a kind of way of looking at the world that I think theology was as much a part of and a product of as anything else. And I think the eclecticism that they talk about in this little idea is something to think about in terms of theology. Every home different, not every home looking the same. People building their home with things that they like, regardless of what those things are, expensive or cheap, old or new. They talk about nostalgia. I'm not sure that it's even nostalgia as much as it is connected to some of the other issues that you bring up, which is about sensitivity towards waste in the environment, which is the second point, about which I thought was really funny. And I
yeah.
thought you, when I read that one, conscious bars and
Bars,
this idea of a zero waste cocktail bar, where they pay more attention to all of the disposability that goes with. But again, thinking about how bars and things can become more environmentally conscious, growing their own stuff, making their own syrups, using, getting rid of all that cluttery,
Yeah.
bad stuff they put in drinks and making more organic things. And again, to me, it feels like it points to how important to many people, to more and more people, the environment is in so many ways. And they make a couple of really interesting points. And they talk about, actually, I think they talk about how the, the kind of minimalism thing
Yeah.
was actually a kind of a capitalist strategy as much as as anything else. I thought that was really interesting that they brought that up.
Yeah. Well, I
That
mean,
we sold this sort of idea about
yeah.
minimalism.
Yeah. I think like anything, things ebb and flow and everything's on a pendulum. And for a while, everybody was about the Marie Kondo thing. It's funny though, because I never was. Like there was something about that for me that just didn't resonate.
Yeah,
And like this just feels, I don't know, something felt really, I mean, no offense to suburban moms, but it just felt like a very kind of mom trend thing. And I was like, I don't need to Marie Kondo things. Like, do I want my space to be cluttered and dirty and messy? No. But having things around me that remind me of my life and who I am, everywhere I've come from, places I've been, visited, lived, who I am now and where I'm going, I want those things around me. I want to be reminded of those things. I want the things around me to tell me stories of who I am and my journey and my life and my truth. And so it's interesting because when you said that thing about nostalgia, because obviously the article, the maxi modernism or whatever they're calling it, talked about the cultural nuances that we want around us in our homes, and that they evoke a sense of nostalgia and comfort. And you said, I don't know if it's so much nostalgia. And I would agree. I don't think that it's 100% nostalgic. I do think it's a matter of we want to be told stories of our journey often,
Yeah.
because for the first time in a long time, it's a generation of people who are proud of their stories and who are proud of their, battle wounds and their scars and things that they've kind of come through. And, when we're talking theologically and we're talking about our spiritual journeys and our stories, and, we all have a story to tell, about God and Jesus and scripture and churches that we learned all this stuff in, and kind of how we've come through it. And I feel like Marie Kondo is like the new atheism of
Yeah.
decor trends. Do you know what I mean? Because it's the sense of like, throw everything out. Your story before now doesn't matter. We're just going in a new direction. It's minimal, it's basic, it's light and airy. And we don't want to be reminded of any of the shit that we had around us before now. We are starting over. And I'm not saying that it's not cool and not good to start over. I think sometimes we need to do that. And you and I have done that a few times, you more than me, in our lifetimes, is we've just, picked up and started again and started anew. But for me, like now that I'm settled in England, and you too, we've kind of been redoing your flat these last several months. And it's really a matter of like just having around us and about us things that evoke something in us. And it's not this golden haze of a yesteryear of something we used to love and live in and we want to live in it again. It's the sense of like, wow, look at all the ground I've covered. Look at who I am. Like, look at the colors that I have sort of taken on and like, look at these. And it's not even like a physical thing. Like, in our home in England, I'm working on our staircase right now. And the whole stairway we refer to as a cult wall, or my husband refers to it as a cult wall, but essentially it's a wall about, you know, I guess Christianity gone by, like Christianity. So it's
Yeah.
like, antique paintings and busts and plasters and posters and lithographs and so many different things from different eras of Christian history or the church, or stories that were offshoots of, we have some Dante stuff happening. And like for me, obviously, I'm not a Christian in that way where I'm revering these pictures of Christ or a nativity or a bust of someone or whatever, but it's a sense of like, I'm 38 years old. I'm living in England. I am, post-theist radical theologian. We're doing this stuff now, but it all started as a Catholic Italian girl in New York. And
Yeah.
then I was evangelical, and then I was Pentecostal, and then I moved through. And so it's like, you get to a place where it's like, you do try and run away from your story. And I think you do try and outrun it. And that's kind of where the Marie Kondo comes in. But
Yeah.
then you kind of get to a place where you're like, I really love who I am. And I really love what my life is about and everything that is about me. And I think, again, for talking theologically speaking, it takes people a while who move on from traditional notions of God and Christianity to feel at home, or at some sense, some semblance of peace in
Yeah.
this new found theological outlook that is really defined by what it's not. In a sense, its foundation is uncertainty, and that takes a long time to be okay with. And so I don't know. That was just like a huge rabbit
Yeah.
trail. But
I mean, I do sort of, I mean, I understand the whole, like, because, there's clutter,
hmm,
and then there's something else. And I think it's about what's missed in that whole thing for me. I don't know why we're on this, Jag, and I got nothing against
but
that
I
woman.
love it. It's great. Let's
Is that it's not about clutter. I understand getting rid of
yeah.
unnecessary messes, but being surrounded with things that
Yes.
stimulate you,
Yes.
reflect who you are.
Yes.
I mean, I understand, you hold, it's like you keep 30 books, the 30 books that bring you joy.
Yeah.
Well, that's an impossible thing, because it implies that you've only ever got 30 books. And I don't know, I just, but I'm also pretty, I have no problem with walking away from stuff either. So
Yeah. Totally.
I hold things sort of lightly, but I've always been I've always been into immersive environments that make me feel connected to the world in particular ways, and I think that's why clinical, sterile theological positions don't interest me. I need a little bohemian eclecticism in my
Well,
theology.
and it's funny because if we really want to go tit for tat with this kind of metaphor and analogy that we're doing, then in one sense, I feel like it is maximalism to do a certain sort of systematic theology that we're no fans of. Because what systematic theology does is it, what's the word I'm looking for? It's on the tip of my tongue. In a sense, it speaks to every sort of last thing we could ever imagine about God or spirituality or Christianity, whatever you want to call it, rather than kind of leave room for all the mystery. We just have propositional statement after propositional statement with proof texts on why we think this about that. We have doctrine after doctrine, lists, historical references. You know what I mean? In a sense, it's maximalist. However, it's not maximalist in the sense of like everything has its place. It's maximalist in the sense of this is clutter and it needs to be cleaned up because a lot of this stuff doesn't matter and it's getting in the fucking way. Do you know what I mean? So why don't we call post-theism moody maximalism?
You mean D.L. Moody?
No, I don't. Definitely not. Go to Pinterest and type in moody maximalism and you'll get the inside of Barry's flat and a little bit of my home as well. But
Yeah, so I mean the other things they bring up, it's I thought it was funny, man-tenance, which is about men,
I loved that.
which is about, there's two that are about bodies. One is, man-tenance, which is about men. It's about, men using
Redefining what it means to be the modern man,
really,
essentially.
but really it's expressing a version. It's a different form of masculinity that incorporates what has been perhaps regarded as feminine up until now, which is things like skincare and even makeup and things like that. Again, it's not so much what they're pointing out in terms of how that gets marketed. To me, what's interesting is that it points to the fact that issues around gender are again really important.
Yeah.
And they're being addressed in a number of ways. And you can make all kinds of, and I'm sure there'll be a host of
Sure.
preachers on whatever social media platform decrying, men wearing makeup or whatever. And I'm not saying you should or shouldn't. What I'm saying is that trend tells you
Yeah.
that there is something breaking open
Yes.
in
Yeah.
the realm of masculinity that is breaking open around issues, I think, of gender or all the way around.
Yeah.
That is a really, again, another important theological notion. Like the old delineations just simply don't hold anymore. And
Right.
what most men probably aren't running out to buy Tom Ford eyeliner or
Sure.
stuff like that. More
But
and
they
more.
are more concerned with skincare regimes. They are more concerned with, grooming and, all of
Yeah,
that.
and the other one was about DNA skincare.
Yeah. Genetic interface, I
Yeah,
think they
which
called it.
is about using more using DNA to kind of be more effective and not just byproducts because they get hyped to you and stuff, which I think taps into marketing. But it also that interestingly points to how much we live in a world where there are these like hyper personalized
Sure.
environments that you can go into that it's funny. I think on one level we're seeing the collapse of a particular form or version of individualism. I
Yeah.
think it's sort of gone away, but there's this hyper personalization of products going on. But I think in all of that, that's connected to all different kinds of understandings about how the body works, how different we all are in very minute ways, like we're the same but different, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And this one size fit, they say one size fits all strategy, they're moving away from it. And I think, again, it's that's the problem with theology, isn't it? For many people, they have a one size fits all. Everybody is supposed to think this way, believe this way, believe these certain things, apply this regime,
Yeah.
and it doesn't work for everybody. You know what I mean? We're not the same. We have different needs. We come to different encounters. We have different experiences of the transcendent or the sacred or the divine or whatever you want to call it. And I think I just think that's what's fascinating about these things. And the last thing was downloadable drops, which is about technology and the fact that eventually you'll be able to 3D print clothes, which seems unreal. But not so long ago, a 3D printer was huge and could only be used by companies, and now they're already 3D printing homes out of concrete.
I know, it's insane.
So and the technology on some levels kind of exists on certain areas. But again, technology is reframing and reshaping the world. And I've said for many years now that I really think where, the intersection of theology and technology is vastly underexplored.
Yeah.
And I think technology affects theology. I mean, in its purest form, the virgin birth is no big miracle in the 21st century, in that you can
have a real virgin birth if you actually wanted.
yeah, you can. I mean, you can
Yeah.
have no sexual intercourse and have a baby.
Yeah.
Virgin birth.
Yeah, for sure.
And and that's, so technology repeats theology, but also technology challenges theology because new technological horizons change the way we understand ourselves and the way we look at the world.
Well, and theology is technology.
Yeah.
It's the progress of how we have, decided to engage meaning making at any particular time in history. So it's all sort of technology, really, at the end of the day. And I think it's really interesting about this trend report. And again, like I said, when we started the podcast, we've kind of been following this organization for a while. But anybody who says like church and religion and Christianity, all of these things are outside of culture and exist, on a universal continuum somehow, it's just not true. Like we just made several comparisons between theological trends and like cultural, and social trends. And it's pretty clear when you take a look at it all. And so it's like we're all kind of moving, we're shifting together. Everything's plastic, everything's evolving. And faster than ever before. But I just think it's so telling. And so even like when you said, we're kind of coming to this new sort of individualization where it's not such hyper individualized anymore, but we're actually kind of paying attention to ourselves from a collective standpoint, but our differences like within the collective. And that is like something that is being explored, across churches and spiritual constructs and, theological ideas of like, hey, we're in community and we're all in this together, but we have these vastly different experiences and these vastly different understandings of life and what it means to be a human in our own skin, and figuring that out and leaning into it all. So I love how it's all connected. I love how, it all kind of tells this story of all of us kind of moving forward and shifting together. But good chat, Baz.
Yeah, good chat. Buffy St. Marie.
Huh. Anything you want to close with? Yeah, give me a killer closing. You owe me.
A killer closing?
No.
Goodbye, everybody. Thanks for listening. It's been a wonderful time.
If you are interested in actually engage in this conversation aesthetically, head to our YouTube channel if you're listening to this on a podcast platform, and you can check out Barry's amazing background in his flat. I am mobile right now. I'm in New York. I'm not in my home, but one day we can sort of explore that too. But Barry's flat is certainly something to behold. So,
and I'm just going to go put some eyeliner on right now.
I've been telling you for years you should go back to eyeliner. You'd be amazing with just a little bit of eyeliner.
Yeah, whatever. I'm kidding. All right.
Okay, ciao, everybody. See you next week.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Bye bye.